It was once said by Napoleon Hill to deliberately seek the company of people who influence you to think and act on building the life you desire. Today on the Champion Forum podcast, we discuss the value of the Mastermind group. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today on the show, we are going to discuss a subject that I don't think gets nearly enough attention. Have you heard of mastermind groups? Maybe you're a part of a mastermind group. If not, we're going to challenge you today to explore this subject and the value of this. And my experience in talking to professionals and leaders, clients, proteges, people that I mentor about this subject is oftentimes they've heard of the concept, and even many of them understand the concept. However, when I ask, have you ever been a part of a mastermind? The answer is usually no. And this concept was coined in 1925 by author Napoleon Hill, who many of you know, in his book, The Law of Success. And he described it in even more detail in his 1937 book, Think and Grow Rich, which many of you have probably read. In his books, he describes and discusses the idea of the mastermind, which refers to two or more people coming together in harmony to do what? Solve problems, which as leaders, we have plenty of those, right? This is this cooperation that we can gain through the use of a mastermind group. And this was one of the laws of success that Hill learned studying many successful people, the likes of Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Theodore Roosevelt, John D. Rockefeller, and even Charles Schwab. So thinking of those names, it would stand to reason that if these giants of industry who achieved great success adopted this concept, adopted the concept, then it's something that shouldn't we be paying attention to this? And so today on the show, I have an expert on the subject that has not only personally benefited from masterminds, but also has helped countless others with this strategy as well. Aaron Walker has founded more than a dozen companies over the past 41 years. He attributes much of his success to having surrounded himself with his own mastermind counterparts. He spent a decade meeting weekly with the likes of Dave Ramsey, Dan Miller, Ken Abraham, and 5 other amazing entrepreneurs. He's the founder of Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind that now hosts 20 groups with national and international members. He's also the author of View from the Top, a must-read to fully understand how to live a life of success and significance. He's also the creator of the Mastermind Playbook, which is an amazing resource for starting, running, and scaling masterminds. Aaron lives in Nashville, Tennessee with his wife, Robin, of 40 years. He has 2 incredible daughters and 5 beautiful grandchildren. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me on, buddy. I've been fired up for this interview today. So thank you for having me as your guest.
Absolutely. I'm very excited about it. We were introduced by a mutual friend, David McLennan, who is a friend of the show. And anytime he recommends somebody come on the show, I usually don't even question it. But as David and I were talking, and he was expressing the depth of the energy that you've put into masterminds and how successfully you've helped many leaders, entrepreneurs, and people that want to grow personally, I thought, man, this is a guy that I need to have on. And as I began to, kind of research and prepare for the show, what I love about having guests like you on is that you're somebody that has lived it. You're somebody that has walked it out. You're passionate about the subject so much so that it's time to give back and get and serve other people. So I really appreciate you being on and getting an opportunity to learn from you and the value of the mastermind. And I know one of the things that you talk a lot about as you passionately talk about masterminds is the value of community. You've seen this firsthand in your own life, and now you're helping others to experience this. What is the value that you've seen in surrounding yourself in community as we go and reach our fullest potential?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking that. We're going to digress just for a minute. We're going to go way back because I was in the seat that a lot of your listeners are in today. Never heard of the word mastermind, first of all. And years ago, decades now, I'd never heard of the word either. Dave Ramsey and I met in the early 90s. He gave me advertising to try him when he started his first show here in Nashville. Fell in love with what he was doing. We built a friendship, and I became a sponsor of his show for 21 consecutive years. Well, about 5 or 6 years into our relationship, I saw him at the Curb Center here in Nashville, and he invited me to join his mastermind group. And I'm like, Dave, I don't even know what a mastermind group is. What are you talking about? And he said, come to my office Wednesday morning. I'll introduce you to the guys, and I'll explain to you more then. So I went home and I told Robin, I said, listen, Dave's going to get all up in my business. You know how he is. He's going to be calling me out, and I don't want to do that. I don't even want to go. And Robin said, hey, go and check it out. Just see what it is. And I went. I was very timid. The first probably 90 days, I sat in a corner and I listened, and Dan Miller started sharing problems with his children, and Ken Abraham started sharing problems that he was having with his spouse. And then Dave started sharing problems with people he was hiring. I said, God, they're more screwed up than I am. I said, I don't have anything to fear here. And what they created was an environment of safety. It was non-biased, trusted advisors coming together for the benefit of the persons in the group. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I can get behind this because there's no judgment. There's no condemnation. It is a safe place for me to let the veil down, where I can come in and share problems with my own children, with my own spouse, with my own business. You see, Jeff, we don't know what we don't know. And when you surround yourself with other competent, capable people, they can give you insight like you've never had before. They can give you perspective on things that you've never experienced. And I'm like, man, it has absolutely poured gasoline on my ideas. It's kept me out of trouble. It's really catapulted me to a different level. And so I didn't want to do that either. And a lot of your audience is sitting there thinking, man, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go into a group and share all these problems. Listen, we're all on a journey. We all have problems. We all have areas in our life that we need insight. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to subject myself to that level of scrutiny, and I want to invite them in because I know they care about my benefit and my success. Yeah. And so that started me on a journey of being in a mastermind group to date every week for 22 years now. And it's radically changed my life.
It's amazing. And I think it's well said. And I talk a lot on this show about one of the secrets to success, if it's even a secret, is get around people that have been where you want to be. Sure. And we see this in mentoring. We see this in masterminds. And I think it is refreshing to know that, you know, none of us have it all together. Nobody has it all together. And sometimes some of the biggest problems we face, somebody's already been down that road. And I love the name of your group, Iron Sharpens Iron, because I think that really says it well, is that where I might be lacking, somebody else has a strength. And when you get that in a group setting and can be vulnerable, man, it can really change things. I've seen this personally in my own life, in getting around people. I remember early on in my professional life, I wasn't even a leader yet. I was still an individual salesperson, but I was on a board at my church, actually, and way out of my comfort zone. But I start going to these board meetings, and I'm surrounded by, you know, the likes of doctors and lawyers and accountants and, you know, all of these people, busy entrepreneurs. And just by being around them, although I felt a little bit intimidated, boy, the law of the lid was really in place. And I was like, wow, I'm surrounded by all these amazing men, and I could start gleaning from them and learning from them. And I will tell you that getting around them really kind of taught me how to act as a leader and as a professional. And it was absolutely a game changer for me. And on that note, I think is a good thing to talk about. I heard in one of your interviews that I listened to, one of the things that you say is that the isolation is the enemy of excellence. And I think that is so well said. What does this mean? And what would you say to the person that's saying, well, I already got it figured out pretty well on my own?
Yeah, I would say that person's in for a major letdown in the future, because we can't have experienced every trial and situation that's going to come before us as we move forward in this journey called life. You know, I was thinking through what you said related to the people that were in mastermind groups, very successful people like Henry Ford and Andrew Carnegie and Schwab and Charles Schwab and the likes of those. It's like, do people not realize that those are successful people and they're really busy? And maybe the reason that they're so successful is they're willing to subject themselves to this level of scrutiny. So I just want you to think about the people that you mentioned and their level of success. They certainly wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't extreme value. Back to your question, isolation is the enemy to excellence. And I think we all, nationally and internationally, can attest to the fact that isolation is a bad thing. This pandemic has really heightened our awareness up to the complications related to isolation. Not that a lot of people weren't isolated initially, but there for about an 18-month period, we were all in isolation. And a lot of the mental fatigue and the emotional fatigue that we're experiencing today are a direct result of being isolated. And if we really want to go somewhere fast, go alone. But if you really want to get somewhere great, go with a team, go with a community. And so you can't expose yourself to everyone in the world to the level that I'm talking about. That would be foolish to do. You've got to have context for the conversation, and you've got to dole out the areas in your life until that person can be trusted, because trust is earned and it takes time in order to earn that trust. But once you do reach those individuals that can be trusted, and you can go to them and say, hey, I don't want it to be this way, but it is, and I'm not sure how to get out. Or I don't want my relationship to be this way with my spouse, but it is, and we're stuck and we can't get out. I've got children that have gone wayward. I don't want them to do that. Obviously, I don't know what I'm doing, or maybe it wouldn't have happened. Help me get them back on the right path. Right. You see, it does take a community. You and I were teasing about that before the interview situation we were talking about, and it took both of us to solve that problem. Well, that's the way it is in our life each and every day. But those people that you were referring to, hey, I've got it figured out. Well, we don't know if you've got it figured out or not, because you could walk through a door as a result of someone else's initiative, and then it opens up whole new horizons, right? There's whole new things there. I was at a conference recently, and Jeff Hoffman was speaking. He's one of the founders of Priceline. Got an opportunity to talk to him in the hall for a few minutes. He's a multi-billionaire. I don't know how many. It doesn't even matter. But he said that 10% of everything he reads has nothing to do with anything he's interested in. And I'm like, well, that makes no sense whatsoever. He goes, no, actually it does, because if I already know it, I don't need to learn it. And he said 90% of all the success that he's had has come out of that 10% reading, because it's introduced him to new opportunities. See, that's what mastermind groups do. You're like, I used to get out of the shower and go to Dave Ramsey's office, all those years. And I'm a guy of ideas. I'm a creator developer. I've got all these ideas. And you probably like me, Jeff. You're like, man, we could do this. And I would say, hey, I'm excited. I want to do this. And Dave Ramsey would go, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I'm like, what? I said, it sounded good in the shower. And then Dan Miller would say, hold on, Dave. He said, listen, if we were to do this with this idea, and we were to get this resource, and we were to put this person in place, I think he's onto something. And see, I didn't know those resources. I didn't know those people. I didn't know to look at it from that lens. See, we all have one filter. It doesn't matter how bad you want to see it from a different perspective. You can't. It's impossible, because you have one life experience, right? You were raised in a geographic area. You have one set of parents. You had influences in your life. That's the way you think. But there could be much better ways. And that's what I've exposed myself to now for over 2 decades. And it's absolutely been a catalyst to a lot of our success.
There's no question about it. And it has been for me as well. And, you give a lot of great analogies when you talk about this. And, in my own life, I'm a visionary like you. I'm the big idea guy. I like to go to the meeting and throw out the vision and the ideas, not even knowing how we're going to get there. And some of the groups that I've been a part of, like you had mentioned, your meeting, you go to your mastermind and you say, I got these great ideas, and they're starting to call you out a little bit, like, how are you going to get there? And I have found, like, in masterminds that I've been in, groups that I surround myself with, I need some strong integrators in those groups, because they're going to help me with my blind spots. And we all have them. And there's adversely, the integrators that are in those groups get a lot of value from me being the visionary. And so that creates balance in our life, and it helps us really uncover our blind spots. You had mentioned, our prep for the show a couple minutes before we we hit record. You and I were just talking and catching up a little bit. And here's what happened in that moment. And I'm thankful for it. Aaron, he uncovered a blind spot and he told me, Jeff, your sound is not good. Here, we found out that this beautiful mic that we've invested in wasn't working at all. And we were picking up on a different mic and we had to grab a different cord and all of this. And here we thought we had it figured out. And he said, again, I think you need to move the mic closer. You're not going to be happy with how this sounds. And I wasn't offended at all. I was like, wow, I am so glad that we didn't go through several minutes. And that is the beauty of getting great people around you, that they have your best interest. You don't feel called out. It is vulnerable to your point, but you don't feel called out and offended. Why? Because you start to build some level of relationship and you see that they're giving me this feedback because they want to see me succeed. And I have found that as well. You have found that. And, on the subject of isolation, yes, it's going to help us as business people, as leaders, as entrepreneurs. But I have also found that it has helped me personally. You had mentioned going to groups and people are talking about their kids and maybe their marriage. And if you're okay with it, Aaron, I would like for you there was a moment in your life that maybe more than any business venture you ever had, that you needed to rely on the mastermind to get through a tough situation. Yeah. Do you mind sharing that story and how that group impacted your life?
Yeah, not at all. You said something really important just now, and I don't want the audience to miss what you said. You said the word vulnerability.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to be in mastermind groups because they're afraid of being vulnerable. We really have to build on a solid foundation. And I just want to encourage your listeners to think for a second. If you're making your decisions behind a facade, behind a curtain, they're not going to last long term. So where strength begins is the intersection of vulnerability and transparency. And once we understand the value of vulnerability and transparency, it endears you to other people. People think it isolates you, but it doesn't. It endears you because we all have challenges in our life. And when you as the host are willing to go there and be vulnerable and be transparent, so are the persons that are listening to you. So now we formed a bond, we formed a relationship. And I don't want your audience to glean by that too quick or go by that too quick. I want them to really think about the value of being vulnerable. Yeah, there was a time in my life, it was August 1st, 2001. Things were really good for me. I had built a very successful business. And I'm not saying that in any way to boast or brag. I'm just setting the context for you. When I was 18, I started my first company. I retired at 27. I sold out to a Fortune 500. And that was a good moment for about 90 days. And I became very bored, went back, bought the company I started with when I was a teenager, grew it 4 times the size it was. And when I was 40 years old, I had left our church one morning on a Wednesday morning. We go to our church on Wednesdays and pray with our pastor. There's 5 or 6 people that get around him and pray for him and pray for our families. It was 7:30. I was within a mile of my office when a gentleman was crossing the street to catch a bus, and he didn't look my way. And he ran out in front of me. And that day I ran over and killed a pedestrian. And my life come to a screeching halt that day, literally a screeching halt. I was like, man, I'm working 3 days a week. I've got a beautiful home. We've got a vacation home, beautiful kids, nice car. I've got all the tangible possessions, but all of a sudden my life come to a screeching halt. In my book, View from the Top, I titled that chapter, I was blindsided. I never saw it coming. For 3 days, I didn't come out of my bedroom. I was so devastated. And then I realized that I couldn't go through this alone. I needed people around me. My friends circled around me. And there was a period of time, even in our mastermind, that I required the lion's share of the time in that group, because you don't just get over running over and killing somebody, right? God gives you the grace at some point to be able to deal with it. But it was through the encouragement. It was through the edification. It was borrowing their strength when I didn't have any. And if I hadn't have spent time building these relationships and building a team around me, I wouldn't have had that level of support when I really needed it. And so that's just one extreme measure that happened to me in my life that was transformational for me. And the reason it was is because I couldn't handle the pressure. I decided to retire. I sold the business. I spent the next 5 years kind of going through counseling, being with my group, kind of understanding where I was at. And what I realized through that time was that I'd had great success, but no significance. And I felt very guilty as a result of that, because what little bit of success I had been able to garner over the years, nobody cared about that except my family. Robin and my two girls were the only persons interested in that. And I thought, you know what? My legacy is going to be poor kid from Nashville, Tennessee, makes enough money to retire at age 27, and nobody cares.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not what I want my legacy to be, you know?
Right.
So these guys rallied around me, and I said, I want my legacy to be that Jeff Hancher's life is better as a result of having known me. I was able to encourage him and give to him and support him. And what's the irony of that is that when you spend all of your time reaching out and you give and you support and you help, the reciprocity of that is everybody wants to help and support and guide you.
Yeah.
And so it's just a really fun way to live your life. But I would not have known that had I not surrounded myself with these competent, capable people that I had built this relationship with.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously that's a tragedy. And you're right. You know, we do ultimately get the grace, but I think we all go through a level of tragedy, not to make light of yours, but we all go through challenges. We all go through seasons where it's tough, it's hard. And it could be as something as minimal as, should I take the promotion? Should I leave the company I'm with and go to another one?
Right.
Should I invest in the new software? Clear up to the tragedy that you had. And I can only imagine in the months that ensued after that. And like you said, you took up the lion's share of the time, as it should have been. I'm sure there was a lot of vulnerability, back to our earlier point about vulnerability. And that's like extreme vulnerability. And I've heard you talk about vulnerability a lot as it relates to masterminds. And I've heard you say that the intersection of vulnerability and transparency is where strength begins. What's that mean to you?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to tell anybody anything when I was young. Like, you wouldn't have me on as your guest. I was very arrogant, very condescending. I had had a great amount of success at an early age. I came from a very poor family, and I thought, I'm a man's man. I've made it on my own through grit, determination, perseverance. I've got it figured out, until I had a couple of major failures in my life. And then I found myself face down in a fetal position under my desk going, I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. But when we're in community, we have other people that can call out our superpowers and encourage us. They know what our Achilles heel is. They can point out our blind spots. Alan Lindsay's my best friend for 45 years, called me to lunch one day, and he said, hey, man, I want to talk to you. And I said, all right. He said, I heard that you told a guy at church the other day you've been all over South America fishing. I said, I have. He goes, no, you haven't. I said, yes, I have. He said, no, you've been down there twice. No. He said, you've covered about 10 miles of a 4,000-mile river chain, and you wanted that guy to think you were a big deal. You wanted that guy to think you were a world traveler. You wanted to impress that guy. I know you, and I know the reason you said what you said. He goes, what you should have said is, I've been to South America twice. I've enjoyed the trip. It was fun. You should go. That's accurate. He said, you embellish things. Wow. And people are not going to believe you long term. Boy, it pissed me off. I was so mad. I wanted to poke him in the eye. But when I started monitoring the way I were telling stories, I was embellishing the story. And I was like, I'm not lying. I'm just making it interesting. He goes, that's a lie. You can't do that. You've got to be accurate. Well, I went back later and thanked him. And decades ago, if he hadn't have done that, I wonder where I would be today. I would have continued to embellish. People couldn't believe me. And so that is one of many things. We don't have enough time on this show for me to tell you all the areas of my life that has helped polish me and refine me, put me through the smelter, and really get the impurities out of my life so that I'm a better person personally, professionally, and spiritually. It's a journey. We never reach the summit, ever. It's always a journey. There's always transition. There's always places that we're stuck, and we need people to help us through that journey.
And it's so well said, because when you think of vulnerability and you think of transparency, one of the formulas and one of the attributes that has to come up in that is humility. And you had mentioned early on there was a little bit of arrogance there, and you had one big early, and you know, whether it's that or even the smallest things, we all can fall victim to some level of arrogance. I'm doing fine on my own. I'm good. I don't want to be called out. I don't want people to expose my blind spots. And maybe there is that person out there that's listening that's saying, I'm not interested in joining a group where people are going to call me out. I'm not interested in joining a group where I have to be so transparent that I look some type of a way. You know, by and large, I would tell you, if you walk away from a mastermind feeling that way, you might be in the wrong one. Because vulnerability and transparency is not something to tear a person down. It's to build them up and to find out. You can't fix what you don't know is broken.
Correct.
And the first thing is to have some level of self-awareness. And self-awareness sometimes comes like your good friend. They're exposing it to help make you a little more self-aware, because your intention wasn't wrong, but it was a refining process. And had your friend not brought it up, who knows? You go on in life doing this, and it affects your own brand. And so I think there has to be that in a mastermind. And if you are listening, and that's why you haven't joined one or looked for one or been a part of one, because you need this level of humility, let me challenge you. Let Aaron challenge you and say, you know what? You got to give this a shot, because you might be doing it very good on your own. But here's the question that I would beg you to think about. How good could you be? This isn't about just being good. This is about reaching your fullest potential. And even if you're at the top of your class, we got to set our sights higher to say, even if I'm the best in my field and the best in my industry, have I reached my potential? And if you're not in a mastermind, or you're not relying on other people to expose your blind spots and be transparent with you, then I'm here to argue that you haven't reached your potential, and you need to look into that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. As we've said numbers of times, you just don't know what you don't know. And when you surround yourself with these people and you are vulnerable, you are transparent, there is a level of humility that comes with that. But for the people of faith out there, it says that, humility is a good thing, right? Pride is a bad thing, to, transpose what the scripture says. But that's exactly what it says. Grace be given to the humble, and pride comes before the fall. And so you've got to really go into this with the attitude of letting your guard down, sharing with people that you don't know. There's people listening right now that go home at night and they discuss with their spouse, I don't know how I'm going to pay the mortgage. And they go out to their men's group and they boast about their possessions. And the truth is, there's a dichotomy in those things. They don't want to go and say, hey, I don't know how to read a financial statement. I don't know what to do about cash flow. I don't know how to fix my marriage. They're struggling in many areas of their life. It could be financial. It could be pornography. It could be with their children. There's no telling what problem they're struggling with. They want to fix it, but they just don't know how. And then when you're able to go into a group like this and be transparent and vulnerable, you get solutions for these problems. What they're saying is I'll try to figure it out. And if I can't, I'll just crash and burn. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't want to crash and burn. I'd rather be embarrassed in front of a small group of people than to lose our business, lose my relationship, be separated from my family, my children not have any idea if I care about them or not. I'd rather be embarrassed than I had go through that. Because it's a lot of travesty going on in the world today, because we're unwilling to subject ourselves to this level of scrutiny. And I just want to say that once you get in the group, you realize that they are there to edify you, to build you up, to encourage you, not to tear you down, as you've already very eloquently said. It is a time of refinement, but the process goes on continually. Like, I'm a grandfather now. I wasn't 20 years ago, but I am now. I've never been here. Now we're dealing with adult children. My children are in their late 30s, and we're going to have great grandchildren at some point. So there's new stages in our life every single year, and we need to learn how to adapt to that stage in our life. And so for me, it's not just getting out of the group what you can and moving on. It's about living life with these folks to help you make decisions. Otherwise, who's helping you make your decision as you go through life? If you don't have these trusted advisors, who's helping you?
I agree. And, the listener might be saying, well, if I was in a mastermind with the likes of Dave Ramsey and some of the other amazing entrepreneurs that we referenced, boy,
they weren't, let me interrupt you. they weren't then who they are now. I
And that's
wonder if
where I was
it's
going
as
to
a
go. Yeah.
result
It's
of
like you
being in
build.
the group, right? Ken
Yeah.
Abraham is one of the most prolific authors on the planet. He's written over 105 books, but he hadn't at that time. I wonder if the sharpening of one another catapulted these guys. Dave Ramsey's
Yes.
on 700 radio stations now, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't then. You know how many he was on? One.
Yeah. Right. And it's amazing. Like, we always hear the saying, success leaves a trail, right? And that's amazing because you've been with these guys for decades. Correct me if I'm wrong.
30 years. Yeah.
And I'm sure it looked a lot different then. And so, regardless of your age or where you're at on your journey, it's a testament to that, because I'm sure when people do hear some of these amazing names, they're like, well, no wonder it's a good mastermind. And it begs the argument of, did we pull each other along and help each other out? And, when you think of some of those names, you can't help but to think of likenesses in values and core values, which is something that I think the listener needs to be aware of. Is not every mastermind group is the same. And you got to know when to fish or when to cut bait. And I've heard you talk about the importance of core values. Why is this important as it relates to masterminds? And what would you say to the listener?
Yeah, you've got to align yourself with people that share the same core values as you, because I don't want to take advice from somebody that we're not in alignment in core values.
Right.
And when I really think about my personal core values, I've got an established core value list. There's 5 core values. I'll go through them real quick. First one is relationships matter most. In everything we do, whether we're selling a widget or we have a service business. I've owned 14 businesses to date, 43 years I've been an entrepreneur, and we always say relationships matter most. It doesn't matter what we're doing, right? Relationships matter most. The second thing is make it amazing. If you're not going to give everything you've got to doing it right, man, don't even do it. Like, I don't even want you in my camp. That doesn't mean everything I do is amazing, but it's as amazing as I know how to do it today. I learn a better way. If I sharpen myself better and I can craft that skill, I'm going to make it more amazing. But I'm going to give everything I've got, all the determination, all the grit, every bit of energy I can. I want to make it amazing. The third one is no excuses. Like, I hate excuses. I went to a meeting the other day. A guy texted me. He goes, "Hey, Big A, we still on for the meeting?" And I said, "Yep, I'll be there in 8 minutes." Drove to Starbucks, walked in, and I said, "Todd," I said, "Buddy, let me tell you why I was late." I said, "I forgot the appointment." And he said, "Well, thank you, Big A. I knew you would tell me the truth." Really, I hate excuses. Like, just own it. Just say what it is. And like, hey, we're good. Let's roll. But don't make excuses. The fourth one for me is everything is figure outable. Like, for me, you pose a situation, pose a problem, we're going to figure it out. We had an ice storm here in Nashville a couple of months ago. And a couple of the cars were sitting out, and I've got a 3-car garage. I had a boat and 3 cars. And I said, "Man, I can't get them all in there." And I said, "No, I'll figure out a way." It took me an hour, but I finally positioned the cars in a way where we got 3 cars and a boat in a 3-car garage. And I said, "Listen, you couldn't put a piece of notebook paper between the bumper and the door, but I got it in there." The thing is I look at everything in life that way. And there's some physical limitations, right? And I understand that. I'm not going to run a 4-minute mile. But the things that we want to do, let's push through those upper limit challenges that Gay Hendricks talks about in The Big Leap, and we can accomplish that. And then finally, for me, it's truth before opinion. And for me, truth simply is we look through the biblical lens to really discover what our true identity is, because I don't want my identity placed in things that moth, rust, and destroy and go away. Personally, for me, this is for me because it's my core values. My faith is in Christ, and that's where my identity lies. And then for you, it could be something different. But if we don't have a baseline to point back to, for me, it's the Bible. That's God's word. I can point back and I say, that's truth. I run all my decisions through these 66 books. If it doesn't align with that, then for me, it's not truth. And so you've got to have something to point back to say this is truth. When you get outside of that, I don't really want people helping me make decisions about very important matters in my personal life. And so you've got to get around people that align with your core values.
Yeah. I mean, just listening to what you just said, here's what it screams to me. You know your core values. You know what's most important to you. And so I think what the listener can pick up from that is, or maybe it's a call to action is, do you know what yours are? Because sometimes the best way to find what you're looking for is to know what you want and who you are. You're not going to know who you want to surround yourself with or what that looks like unless you truly know what you're grounded in and who you are. Because then, I heard I went to we're near Amish country where I live, and there's a famous a guy that did all these sculptures and hand carvings and all of this, and just amazing works of art out of blocks of wood. And he's long passed, but we were watching this video, and he was doing an interview, and the guy said, how do you know what pieces of wood to cut off? And this guy that was doing all of these carvings, he would just say, well, I just know what I want it to look like, and everything else, I just cut it away with my penknife. And isn't that a lot like core values?
100%.
Isn't it a lot like I know who I am. Right. And so then I know who I want to be surrounded by. So maybe you've tried a mastermind before and you were like, that was the most miserable experience I've ever had. Well, you probably had a bad meal once too, but you didn't stop eating.
Right.
Like, it doesn't mean that the ideal was bad. So, Aaron, I think it's a tremendous point of knowing the core values, knowing who you are, because whatever it is, whether it's your social life or to the church that you attend or the group that you're a part of, likeness matters. It absolutely matters. And so iron truly does sharpen iron, right? And, as we kind of close this out, I'd like to get your thoughts really to just drive the heart behind this strategy and this ideal. It's very clear that these masterminds have been transformative to you. We just gave the example of these men that are in your mastermind, that's not how it always was. This is transformation. When we're thinking of the listener that has had a bad experience or hasn't done one at all, what would you tell them as they go explore this? What do people get out of a real mastermind that is thriving and running the way that it should?
Yeah, if you approach it from the position that we just spoke to, really align yourself with people of common interest, common core values, people that really want to move the needle, people that have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset, you really can identify that these people are sincere, they're genuine, they're not just trying to upsell you, they're trying to really be in your life to help you along the way. And it takes time. You may have to be involved in a couple of masterminds. You may have to try them out. You don't know until you get in. I know for us, we take all the risk out. We say, if you join our mastermind, it's not what we said, in 6 months, I give all your money back. So it's like we take all of the risk away. And I think any mastermind should do that, because I don't want people to pay me one dime unless they're receiving value. So you've got to see what their mission statement is. You've got to understand their purpose in life. You've got to understand what their core values are. You've got to interview them just like I interview the applicant. And we go through an application, making sure that we can genuinely help you. As you said, and I liked your analogy about the meal, just because, it wasn't good, don't mean we quit eating. Same way with these mastermind groups. Listen, there's nothing like getting in a group, though, that can become your brothers. They can become the person that helps you along the way, regardless. They walk with you through thick and thin. They're there to help you and propel you to the future, give you resources. They give you access. They give you perspective. They give you insight. They give you encouragement. They hold you accountable. There is nothing like that in life. And man, when you find a group that's like that, it is unbelievable. We've had hundreds of people go through our program over the years. We're in 7 different countries now around the world. And it is amazing at what we've been able to put together virtually to help these people excel. I know you do these groups as well, and you can attest to the fact that it is so life-changing that when you get into a good group that can walk along this journey with you, it's just a game changer.
It truly is. And many of the listeners that listen regularly to the show, they they've heard the story. Growing up in poverty, not a ton of direction. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what life was going to look like. I knew I wanted more. There's no way that I end up with any level of success had I not got around people that could help me along the way.
Sure.
And these groups that I've been a part of, mentoring that I've had, it has changed who I've become. I always say, Aaron, that two things can literally change who you become: what you consume and who you surround yourself with. And I believe no matter where you are right now, if you invest in those two things, you can literally change your current state. Even if your current state is good, how much better could it be? Have you reached your potential?
Yeah.
And you mentioned the word legacy a little bit back in our conversation. And, you're a guy that's living this out. What you've built with Iron Sharpens Iron and these masterminds isn't something you have to do. It's something you get to do. You've built 14 successful businesses. Not many can say they've retired at 27. I think you've retired more times than anybody I've ever met. But
my wife said I've retired more than the law allows. I didn't even want to do this, right? It's like, man, it's my calling though, right? God called me to do this. And how do you say no? You can't say no to your calling.
You can't. And that's the point that I'm driving here, is that I said it earlier, get around people that have been where you want to go. And so this isn't just another business venture that you're doing. This is legacy driven. And this is, I heard you on a show talk about, when I think you were talking to a friend, and what are you going to do now? And you're like, I'm not really sure. And they noticed that you in a group setting, you had something to offer. And man, here we are with now reaching international impact. And so maybe tell the listener a little bit about your groups. How do they learn more about it? And of course, we'll have it in the show notes as well, but give the heart about that and how people can connect with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. It's always my intention to add value, never really to point it back to us, but thank you for giving me a couple of minutes here to share. Here's the truth, Jeff. People are starving to death today for authenticity. We see all these Facebook personas, how we're living the 4-hour work week and we're living life to its fullest, and we never argue and we have plenty of money. That's just not reality. That's just not the reality that we live in today. We all have challenges, and we need people around us to help us. And so I hope this hour has encouraged your listeners to see that maybe I need to explore this. Maybe I need to really look into getting these trusted advisors around me. Maybe you've never experienced that. Maybe you've never had any real friends that you could confide in, that you could really let that veil down, that you could really be vulnerable and transparent in front of someone, and you feel like you need to test the water a little bit. I would love to have a conversation with any of you. You feel free to reach out. We actually do a little activity every Tuesday, and we call it Tuesday Noon.live, Live, Tuesday Noon.live. And I teach, and I do that for 45 minutes every Tuesday. There's no cost. You'll never be asked for anything. We're not trying to get you to do anything. We're trying to encourage you. We talk about life's lessons. This past week, I talked about how to prioritize your priorities, how to really pay attention to your life, because every decision we make matters. How you can really incorporate your priorities into your personal life, put the big rocks in first to make sure that you spend adequate time with that. And we do that every Tuesday. So reach out to us at tuesdaynoon.live. Sign up, come check it out. We'll have a really good group, and we just teach and encourage. If you want to know more about the Mastermind, you can go to viewfromthetop.com. I'm happy to interview you, talk to you to see if you're a good fit. We never high pressure. We don't want anybody in the group that doesn't want to be in the group. So there's never any hard sale. We've had people in our organization now 7-8 years meeting in the same groups. People are now doing business together. They're getting resources. They're investing in property together. They're starting new endeavors each and every month. There's just so much activity that's going on because they're doing business with people they can trust.
Yeah.
And then people's lives are getting better as a result of being around this level of accountability. We do programs to help you accomplish your goals and dreams, high levels of accountability, really dive deep into who you are as an individual. I'll be honest with you. It's not for the faint at heart. It's not for the guy that wants to get in and suck everybody for what they're worth and move on to the next group. That's not what we're looking for.
Right.
We're looking for people that really want to make a difference, that really want to grow, that really want to move the needle, and they want to do it in a very refined way. So, yeah,
beautiful.
Reach out to us.
That is beautiful. And listen, we'll have all of the links in the show notes. You can absolutely get those. And let me just challenge the listener. Really take a look at this. Take inventory of where you're at on your journey. You know, we had mentioned some of the amazing, successful people from the book Think and Grow Rich. You said it very well earlier, Aaron, that these people are busy. You know, you make time for what's important. Sure. And so many leaders out there right now are redlining. And if you don't find another gear, you're going to blow. And there's answers to this. And so I just want to challenge you, whatever group that you get a part of, get around people that are going to strengthen you, get around people that are going to help you innovate, get around groups of like-minded people with the same core values that are going to show you your blind spots and help you become more self-aware. That's my heart. I know that that's Aaron's heart. And by the way, I'm going to give you a chance to pronounce your name correctly. We had some fun with this before the show because my friend, my new friend Aaron here, he's from Nashville, as he has told us.
Don't say anything about my accent. I don't have an accent. You're the one that's got the accent.
Exactly. So I've been butchering the name the whole time, but up here we call it Aaron, and it's not Aaron. It is
Aaron.
There you go.
Somebody said, why? I said, because that's the way my mama said it. And it's Aaron. But you know what, Jeff? Everybody that's my friend calls me Big A, and you can't mess that up.
That's right. That's right. Well, Big A, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Core values are important to me as well. And I'm better for knowing you. You can just tell very quickly you're a good man. You're very genuine. And I love what you're doing to give back. The things that you have, the gifts that you have, the skills that you have to help other people reach their potential. And we're grateful for that. So Big A, appreciate you joining today, sharing your thoughts, sharing your wisdom on how we can all become more effective and pursue success and reach our potential. Listener, be sure to get the show notes to this episode because we're going to be sharing the links on how you can contact Aaron and learn more about his resources to help you on your own journey. You can get these by going to jeffhancher.com/show notes. I want to make it even easier for you. If you'd like to have the show notes emailed to you directly each week, you can sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of our homepage of our website, jeffhancher.com. And until next week, keep inspiring, keep making big impact, and never forget that you all have been set up to be champions in this life.